Yes, perfect. So I'm excited. Some people have asked to also record, so I'm excited. Oh yes, okay, perfect. It's recording. So again, my name is Kendra Lewis. Super excited to have you all with us this evening. I would love to introduce our amazing alumni, Nasim, who is generous enough to join us and share some of his experience, give you guys some insider tips, and hopefully inspire you to continue on your path as an educator. So the first thing I would like to do is I'm just going to read out the bio for Nasim and allow him to introduce himself. So Nasim is a special education teacher at Bard High School, Early College, Manhattan. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Arts at Brooklyn College and his Master's at Brooklyn College. He has an undergraduate degree in secondary education and history with honors. As a graduate, his focus is in adolescent special education. Previously, he has taught special education.
Kendra, you're in mute.
Thank you. Okay. So Nasim has experience in being a college coach through CUNY College Bridge for All program. He also has College Now ambassador experience. He was also a note taker for the Office of Disability at Brooklyn College. He has served on Brooklyn College's Education Curriculum Committee. Also contributed to a book, New Yorkers, A City and Its People in Our Time. That's pretty impressive. There are a lot of things you got on your list. He's also been recognized as an outstanding alumni for 30 under 30 at Brooklyn College. Currently, as Educator Rising New York City teacher leader and member of the Social Studies Supervisors Association, Nasim is going for his second degree at Russell Sage in Educational Leadership and Administration to pursue a career in school leadership. So without further ado, please welcome Nasim.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Friday. It is the end of the week. Thank goodness. We made it to the end. I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you, Kendra, for the warm introduction. Yes, my name is Nasim Almuntaser. I'm a special education teacher at Bard High School, Early College, Manhattan. However, my career did not start as a teacher. I was a paraprofessional for some time in elementary school. And while I was a para, I was in school pursuing my bachelor's degree in social studies education, and then that's when I made the transition into teaching. Um, and it has been such an enjoyable experience. Brooklyn College has treated me quite well, and so it's an honor to return back to my home. Um, and currently, I'm starting the leadership program through Russell Sage, and I'm excited to transition into leadership within a couple of years. So I welcome you all, and I look forward to answering any questions and talking about how what the process is for applying to becoming a teacher.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your generosity, for coming back to speak with students, to speak with the alumni as well. I'm just super excited because you're for all the experience that you have, especially being one of the 30 under 30 is just such a honor for you to be here this evening. So again, I really just want to thank you for that. Before we get into the questions, one, I just want to apologize in advance. My camera might go in and out, just a little technology issue. So I just want to give you guys a heads up. If you don't see my face, it's just the camera has gone out, but I'm still here. Additionally, I just want to give a rundown. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to be asking Nasim some questions. Hope you guys have your pen and paper out. I definitely have mine. I'll be taking some notes. I hope you are as well. And after that, if there were anything that we discussed that no one, there's a question that someone wants to ask, we're going to lend some time at the end so that you guys can ask your questions directly if we haven't already discussed that, or if you just need some additional information. So let's get started. Does anybody have any questions before I actually start? Any concerns? All right, everybody looks great. Awesome. So, after listening to you talk about being in pursuing now leadership, but being a special education teacher, I'm just so interested in what really inspired you to become a teacher.
Thank you, Kendra, for that question. Before I answer that question, I do want to thank everyone for coming out on a Friday night on Zoom. That is commitment there, right? That is, you know, when we talk about education, we talk that is what commitment looks like. That's what it feels like, and that is how it sounds like. So I appreciate everyone's presence. Teaching, I knew I was going to become a teacher since the kindergarten. It was my elementary school teacher that inspired me to enter teaching. I remember in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I wanted to become an elementary school teacher. And then in the third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, I aspired to becoming an elementary school principal. Um, and then when I went to middle school, I thought I was going to be a middle school teacher. And then when I went to high school, I said I'm going to become a high school teacher. And now I'm a high school teacher. But long story short, the passion to teaching came because I love helping people. I love helping people. I love when I see young minds shine and glow, and they're like, I get it. Additionally, as a immigrant, as an immigrant whose parents were raised from another country, and as a being raised from immigrant parents, it was very difficult for me navigating the New York City public school system. It was challenging. My parents didn't speak any English. Um, I didn't really have the representation and the advocacy that my counterparts did. And that really drove me into teaching and into education is because I want to be the voice for the voiceless. I wanted to be that advocate for those students who are first gen, for those students whose parents are working 12 to 14-hour minimum shifts, and just don't have the luxury to or the resources to be active in their child's school, whether that's the PTA, um, etc., school leadership team. And so being that voice for the voiceless is very difficult, in particular in the New York City public schools. You will try to be silenced many times because your ideas are the unpopular ones. Um, though internally it's the ones that hold truth and power. And so it hasn't been an easy road, but people have to hear you out, and you have to keep on representing those um that that are from the underprivileged. You have to always go back to your why. And so me always going back to my why is what encourages me and inspires me to come in the next day every day. And so my passion for education started with my own unique experiences of not really of me having to be my voice. And I saw how many stu students in the schools don't really have a voice. They don't know how to use their voice. They are shy, and sometimes, you can be written off as a statistic like that. And so that is why I am here, and that is why I take this job with great seriousness and integrity.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that you hit it on the nose, right? You got to have that passion. And I think more importantly, knowing the why is what's going to fuel you, because it's not easy, right? You have your ups and downs, but just remembering the reason why you started is just going to keep you going and get you through those tough times. So hold on to those moments, guys. Remember why you started when you feel like, it's getting tough. So that being said, I'm curious, what do you enjoy about the job?
The thing that I enjoy, um, I see teaching as I just see it as a way of life. It really has become something that um it almost has become my hobby, though I try not to make it my hobby because it's important to set boundaries. But the thing that I really enjoy about teaching um is when I make a difference in a child's life. It's when I meet the child where they're at. Um, there have been situations where, my students don't have very organized, structured family households. There's violence that goes on at home. And so being their protector, their savior, their supporter, their mentor, and just building those relationships and connecting with students in meaningful ways and seeing growth, not just academically, emotionally, um, is what inspires me and is what I enjoy about the work that I do each and every day.
Excellent. Thank you so much for we have some more students joining us. Awesome. So that lends me to my next question, because now that you're at the job, right, you actually had to apply to get there. So I'm just curious, can you describe the application process?
Yes, I yes, I can. Um, would you mind if I share my screen?
Yes, please do.
Okay, share screen. Okay. So, I call the teacher application process the guide, and I'm going to send it to Ms. Kendra Lewis as well, and she could share it with you all. The teacher application process is one that is quite reflective, right? It's quite reflective in a way where it requires you to think about you, your why, your purpose, because you're going to be doing this for a long time, and you have to be committed. And so when you're applying to becoming a teacher, you want to make sure that you are prepared and answering the questions within the teacher application process. So you have the professional, so as you are getting ready to complete this application, I want you to be prepared to answer those questions, and provide the documentation about your professional background, including your dates of employment. The best teachers are the ones who are able to be reflective, right? And so even if you feel like you have no background in education and this is kind of a transition for you, you're coming from you have background in you have another career and you're transitioning into teaching, that is also something that you're bringing to our students, right? That is something that they benefit. So whenever you're thinking about your professional background, make it authentic. It doesn't always have to be teaching related. Just make it authentic. Make the process and your application sound like you. You want to make sure that you have your academic history, including your GPA, your professional references, definitely building relationships with your professors at Brooklyn College. That will be very helpful. And also references if you're currently employed. Um, your up-to-date resume and past work experience, which I know the Magna Career Center does a phenomenal job. They cleaned up my resume big time. So definitely take advantage. And I still use their outline still to this day. Um, so take advantage. It's free. And the teacher certification status. So you will need to provide proof of New York State teacher certification or documentation that shows your progress towards certification. So you want to make sure that you take the necessary exams to becoming a teacher and that you are that you purchased the actual license, the initial certification license through the Teach account, your Teach account, because in order for you to get hired, you need to be licensed. Now, if you are a teaching fellow, that's a totally different process. I believe that's transitional B. Um, and so the program will support you with that. So when you start the teacher application process, you should get a you should get a screen that looks something like this. You put your email address, your password, your social security, um, your work eligibility, right? So this is just more of like account information. Who are you? Your work eligibility, um, wanting to learn more about like what your prior work experience is. When you click on the website, it should look something like this. So if you don't have a teacher application already, you want to make sure that you're clicking creating an account. You confirm your registration. Your username is usually your email address will be your username. So make sure that you note all the communication and status updates are going to be conducted via that email address. And it is what's associated to your with your profile. I would also recommend you to save your login information because sometimes it could be very tricky in terms of like remembering it or if you may need to a password update, etc. Make sure that your email address accepts at schools@nyc.gov emails, because that is the domain that New York City Public Schools use. Um, so if it doesn't, it may be in your spam junk, so you want to make sure you monitor that. Um, so yeah, we talked about the work eligibility, the education, right? They want to see there's like a component that talks about, what degrees you have, your experiences and references. The resume is what supervisors look for, principals, and assistant principals, and your references. You need uh, 10 to at least one reference. The additional information, applicants will need to enter their demographic information as well as their borough preferences. There will be opportunities later in the application where additional borough preferences can be shared. So there's going to be a section of the application where it kind of it asks you what boroughs would you want to work in, the top three. You want to list them, and it doesn't mean that you just get targeted to those communications. It's just priority in terms of like you're expressing to New York City Public Schools like these are the boroughs that I'm okay working at. Doesn't mean you won't get other communication from other schools within other boroughs. It's just prioritizing those three boroughs of your choice. And then actually starting, so that's just more of the background of the New York City teacher application. But then you have to actually start a new application itself. And you would see something like this box on your after you've submitted you've completed the pre-registration parts of it, the application. You make sure that you start with generating the actual teacher application by starting a new application. And you do that by clicking teacher, you click go, um, and then you'll be able to see, you have your preferences, your first, second, third preference in terms of boroughs that you'd want to work at. You have your geographic references. So the reason why you're filling this out is because it offers the Office of Teacher Recruitment and Quality to be able to kind of use that data in terms of targeting communication to you. And so that is very important. And then District 75, which is special education, that is a non-geographic district providing quality and rigorous individualized educational programs to students with significant challenges. And so if you're interested in that, you can click on the link here and it'll take you there. Um, there's an early childhood preference, etc. There's a student teaching section. So this section will ask you to share if you are currently completing or have completed your student teaching. And student teachers will be asked to provide information on their university as well as New York City Public Schools and borough in which they completed their student teaching. So I remember when I was at Brooklyn College, I did my student teaching at Edward R. Murrow High School. And so I had to make sure that I had to submit that to the teacher application portal just to make sure that they know that I've also met the hours. And then you have the experience and certification section. You want to make sure that you are um, entering your experiences, your tra career journey, what have you done, um, and your certifications as well. Supporting documentations for your certification is very critical too. You must hold a New York State teacher certificate. Um, you want to make sure that it's current and that it's not expired. When it's expired, you have to renew it on the teach account. You are completing a New York State approved. So if you are doing the transitional B teaching fellows, that's separate, that's different. But most students are completing the New York State approved teacher preparation program, and they will receive the teacher certification by the start of the school year. So if you're graduating this year, this semester, or you graduated, or you're graduating in the spring, you want to make sure you start taking your exams and lining yourself up for, start working on your application within the next couple of months so that within the summer, when job postings start going out, you have your exams lined up. You could purchase your license through the Teach account, um, and then you can start as well going on interviews. Principals will not hire if you do not have your license. So please make sure that you get those exams out the way, and so you could become marketable. Now, let's see. So an electronic copy. Okay, so you want to make sure you have an electronic copy of your current or unexpired teacher certification. We spoke about that. Um, and then a proof of on-track New York State certification letter completed by your college or university. So that's also if you're in the process of certification. For me, I remember when I was applying to become a special education teacher, I remember I was in the process of taking the exams. And so I was able to work under the internship license um, and work on my exams, pass them, and then I was able to purchase the license. But oftentimes I know of individuals who are like they have that one exam left that they're about to take, and they're like contemplating whether to take that interview because you don't they're contemplating to take that interview because if they get the job, they don't want to tell their boss, their principal, I'm waiting for that one exam and holding them up. I would highly recommend you to go on that interview, right? Because you are going to take the test at some point. Um, you want to make sure that you schedule it ASAP, you pass it. If you do go on interviews, take them. Because worst case scenario, you don't have, you don't pass the test, they could still hire you as a long-term substitute teacher, which is also really great experience. And that just requires a bachelor's degree. Um, and so, I definitely encourage you to take those opportunities. And then you have the additional experience. So some applicants may be eligible to obtain certification to teach the career and technical education as full-time New York City public school teachers. Um, Friends, family on here. Nowadays in New York City public schools, bilingual is big and CTE is big. Like those are like the two hot, you know, that's kind of like the flashy needs in education, along with special education. The need has always been there, but CTE is now like really popular in New York City public schools and bilingual. So you want to make sure that you line yourself up to ensuring that you have many uh, qualities because you want to make sure that you are marketable to your employer. And so that's very important. And then you have your resume, which the Magna Career Center, as I said, does a really good job. At the very end, this is kind of like the process, right? You want to make sure when you're completing your resume, you're thinking about your audience, your qualification, right? Your audience are principals, are administrators. Those are the people that are hiring you. Your qualifications, you want to make sure that you are qualified. Examples, um, you have your reviewing, you want to make sure that you're keeping your resume clear and concise, checking for grammatical and spelling errors, and that you have a format that is consistent, which you can easily uh, have accessibly. And then your personal statement is very important, right? What is your why? That's very important because this job is not easy, and you need to love it in order to enjoy it. And at the very end, you'll get a congratulatory message screen at the final stage of your teacher application. Um, and you'll be able to see the email history of like all the times the New York City DOE Office of Recruitment wrote to you. Um, Yeah, and that's basically it. And then once you kind of go through that process, then you are able to look for schools. You're able to, there's like a search engine, and you're able to like filter and look for schools based on your subject area, grade, borough, and you can send your resume through this process through this application, but I would highly encourage you to not just do that, but to also go on the school's page on Google and look up the principal and like the assistant principals, which you can find on the school page, and send your resume and an email to them as well. So it's very important to not just submit through this portal, because a lot of people are going to do that, but also what makes you stand out is going above and beyond, which is sending that email. You want to kind of stand out in order to get that interview and to sell yourself. And you want to make sure you have a clear, concise elevator pitch that is engaging, that shows commitment and love for working with young people.
Excellent. We do have one question from the audience. What is CTE?
That's a great question. So I'm going to go back to the CTE section. CTE. All right. I believe it was here. So CTE, this is it. CTE is career and technical education. Um, so if you have at least one paid year full-time professional experience in one or more CTE subjects, industries, that's just kind of like an additional experience that you can add to your application in order to kind of um, in order to make your application stronger. And so career and technical education, when you're thinking about that, I want you to think about like these are the schools that are either focused on healthcare, right? That are focused on hospitality, engineering, construction, right? So these are kind of the things that students are like doing hands-on type of stuff. So if you have experience in that, that's pretty like that's really interesting, and that's a great experience to have. But that's something that our that's like popular nowadays, I'm realizing, because a lot of our students, their next step is not college. Most of our students now, right? Their next step is how do I make the most money? And our young people are realizing that, I can more money than someone else who graduated with 3 degrees. And so CTE has kind of been a hot commodity in New York City public schools within the different programs that they offer.
Thank you for explaining that. We do have another question from the audience, but before we get into that, I want to go back a little bit when you talked about borough selection. Does anybody know? You could enter it into the chat. You can say it out loud if you would like to unmute yourself. Does anybody know what areas are the most high needs areas out of the 5 boroughs? Yes, thank you, Chantal. Yes, Brooklyn and the Bronx. So this is so important that you're aware of this. You know, in order to increase your chances, you want to be flexible. You want to be willing to apply to these different areas, especially if you want to get hired because it is the high needs area. So just keep that in mind with the application. Also, please apply early. It's so important to apply early. It's like you know, when you get on the plane and you're waiting to the last minute and then it's like it bottlenecks, right? And it gets crowded. It's the same thing with the application. They have to look at early or at all the applications and they do make early decisions. So I encourage you all to apply early. The applications are should be opening on January 13th. So keep that date in mind, which is right around the corner. So I think this is perfect timing. And I think that Nasim did a great job explaining how to apply. But I think he also mentioned, right, like don't forget about your professors. The networking part is just so as important as applying online because you have to take additional steps to, you know, to get hired. So just make note of that, right? Once you apply, that's not the end of your journey with the application process. You still gotta get your feet wet, get to the hit the pavement, you know, and speak to principals, speak to administrators, so that you hear about the opportunities. Even, you know, coming back and speaking to me, there's always opportunities that I'm hearing about. Nasim also has shared opportunities with me. So if you guys don't stay engaged and connect, then those opportunities, you might not hear about them. So it's so important. That's also a part of the application process. So keep that in mind. So let's get into this next question. Chantel asks, how long should your personal statement be? She started writing her, she started writing her responses, but she's kept them short and precise. So what is your opinion on that, Nasim?
Short and precise is the answer, right? You want to make sure that it's quality over quantity. There is obviously typical, word limits between 500 to 700 words, but you want to make sure to include your educational background. You want to make sure to include teaching experience that you may have, or if you're like a career changer, think about a time when you had some sort of interaction with teaching, and try to connect it to like your your hunger for wanting to teach young people what at the grade level of your choice. Your teaching philosophy is huge. I was asked that at every most interviews. What is your teaching philosophy? You need to be able to know your teaching philosophy in and out. Um, and and I know that's usually taught in the seed 3402 class. And the C 2001 class, like literally the first class you take. So like teaching philosophy, you must know in and out. And then highlighting any skills or areas of expertise that you have. So if you have leadership skills, they want to see that. Like what have you done in your community? They want to see all of those things. And how you plan on offering those your specialized skills and your expertise to their school. So it's not just talking about me, but you also want to make sure that somewhere at your final paragraph of your teaching statement, of your personal statement, you include how you plan on meeting the need of the school. And the way that I would say would be the most highly effective way to ensuring that you're targeting the needs of the school in order to get that interview and in order to impress that principal is by looking at the school's report card. You want to make sure that you look at the school snapshot. The school snapshot tells you a lot of things about the school before you get in, before you even express interest. It tells you what its priorities are. It tells you the demographics. It tells you the academic rigor. It tells you, how many students have IEPs, how many students are bilingual. It tells you the programs that it has to offer. It even gives you information on the school leader, right? And this is the thing that kind of not a lot of people told me about, and I'm glad that I'm sharing with you all. But there's a section on the report card. It talks about school leadership, and it talks about, you know, how teachers feel about the school leader. Please take a look at that section. That data is very important. You want to make sure that you want to make sure that you're going to work feeling comfortable every day. Unfortunately, my first experience was not the greatest as a first year teacher because I didn't look at the school report card. I was such in a rush of getting a job that I wasn't taking the school report card seriously. I didn't even I couldn't find it. I didn't know how to find it. I didn't even think about looking for it. Um, and so uh, that really kind of screwed me over. But thankfully, I'm in a much better place. But you want to make sure I highly recommend you look at that school report card because that will allow for you to target your skills to the need of the school. And you can also obviously look at the school website, but I wouldn't solely rely on the school website to definitely do your research on the report card of the school and take a look at who your leader is. Look at their experiences, right? Look at um look at where they're coming from and their teaching philosophy and their vision and their mission and their school's instructional focus. You want to make sure that your teaching philosophy aligns to the school's instructional focus because if it doesn't align to it, you will have a very difficult time. And so those are just kind of things that you want to think about. But definitely to answer the question, 500 to 700 words.
Excellent. We do have some more questions. We'll take those. I'll just take the last one first, just because you just talked about the school report card. So Genevieve asked, where can we find that data on school administration?
That is a great question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the link for you all. Um, it's the New York City DOE school snapshot link. So here it is. So for example, I'm going to show you what I mean about how to kind of like look at the school data. Um, so let me share my screen again. So this is what the website looks like. I know at Brooklyn College you have, so we're gonna choose any school. You can also look at the academic school year. You're gonna choose any school. So let's just choose Brooklyn College Academy, right? Right on Brooklyn College. So if I look up Brooklyn College Academy, um, I can click on this, right? So immediately what I see is the school information, right? I see the student achievement. I can see the rigorous instruction, how collaborative teachers are. So those are things you want to make sure, like as a skill, that you're a collaborative team player, right? How supportive the school community is, the effectiveness of school leadership. You want to make sure you're going to a school that you're being supported, right? You don't want to be in a school that you feel like you're walking on eggshells every day. It does not bring a good taste uh, to to your interaction with teaching. Um, and trust, the strong ties with the community and trust is very important. And so what I had meant is like this is the general information. So I can go on the school website here. I have the leader here, the grades, I even get the average SAT scores. You can even learn, like if you want to kind of be in a big school or a small school, you have the enrollment here. So those are things you can think about. If you want to be in a school or it has its own building, or versus it being shared, that's a component there. Here's the demographics of students, and here are the demographics of teachers. So if you're looking for diversity, that's there. If you want to look into staff experience, which is very important, if you notice that there's like 94% of teachers who only have a minimum of 3 years of teaching experience, like that may be something you want to question, right? Because that means there's a turnover. So you want to look at the school data and you want to make sure that there's some sort of retention that's going on in taking place within the school. because that is what your future home will want to be like. So you're looking for your future home, and in order to work for your to look for your future home, you got to make sure that you're looking for the the place that you can afford, right? It's almost like when you're looking for a home, you're looking for that mortgage that you could afford. You want to make sure that it's something that you can wake up to each and every day because you are spending most of your time there. So that's more of demographics, the school overview. You have like extra activities and sports, PSAL, that's more of kind of like the advanced courses that they have to offer, etc. So that's that. That's just school info. Then you have the student achievement. So how many students are like what's the percentage of the graduation rate? That's very important. Graduating from that school, college and career readiness, that's also critical. Um, the progress towards graduation, that's very important. Rigorous instruction, curriculum, how effective is teaching and learning, that's significant. Collaborative teaching, teachers, that's a very important section you may want to look at. Um, and one thing that I want you to pay attention to is the survey response rates. This is very critical. You'll see here that 92% of teachers completed this survey. That's how you know the data on this for this school is pretty accurate. Not all the time are you going to see 92%. Most of the time, you may see 50%. We're going to look at an elementary school very shortly right now, to kind of meeting all of your needs. So supportive environment, that's something you want to look at. Attendance, are students coming in? Um, Effective school leadership, that's critical. Strong family community ties. How is the school um tied with the how is the school community tied with the families? This is the most important section. Every other section is critical, but it's really important to look at the trust section. You want to make sure you come to work feeling happy. Remember, 92% of teachers filled out this survey. So what percentage of teachers say that they trust their principal? 100%. The city average is 80%. This is a home. This is a school that you may want to look into, right? What is the percentage of teachers that trust each other? That's also very important. 94%. The city average is 81. That is very important. This data, I would say, is the most important part because this informs retention, whether the school is keeping its teachers or if there's a turnover. Um, and I had not known this when I was looking for jobs. As a result, I was a part of, I eventually moved on and found another school. Because when I looked up my school, my first school, it was not the report card was not reflective of the one that you're seeing right now. And so I didn't do my research. And so that's why I paid the price. And so I want you to do your research. So if you look at maybe an elementary school nearby, I don't know, we'll just click on what? Anna Silver, PS20. I don't know anything about this place. Student achievement is a 1, right? The rigorous instruction is a 2. Like this is something that you want to look at. If you look at, student achievement, you can look at how students are performing on exams, right? Do you want to be in a high achieving school versus a low achieving school versus an average achieving school? Um, Rigorous instruction is pretty fair. Collaboration is good. Supportive environment is fair. Um, the effective school leadership is good. Community ties are good. But then when you look at trust, 76% of teachers completed this survey. So I really can't, you know, take this for its face value. It's not too accurate because it's only 76%. But what is the percentage of people that say that they trust teachers trust their principal? 85%. So this probably would not be number one, right? If I'm looking for schools, I want to make sure that the things that I look for is, and you may not have to be looking for this, that's totally fine. The things that I look for is I want to make sure that the teacher survey response is 90 and above, right? You want to make sure that it's 90 and above. If it's not 90 and above, that raises red flags. That means not everyone completed the survey. I also look for trust. That's like, I look for 85% up. Preferably, if I can get a school that has a 90% or 95% trust, that's even better. And then you can, it gives you the school, it gives you the school leader. So for example, this school leader is Sarah Pinto. I don't know anything about Sarah Pinto. You can look up Sarah Pinto on LinkedIn, right? You don't have to connect with the principal, but you can look at their experience on LinkedIn. And then you can even, not just on LinkedIn, let's say if they don't have a LinkedIn profile, you can go back to prior years and you can see how long Sarah Pinto was principal. Because for every year, and you can pay attention to the trends of how many people completed the survey and what people say about trust. So for example, this teacher for the year of 2019, 2020, 39% filled out the survey. This is probably not something, it's probably not as accurate in terms of like taking, like this wouldn't, I know for sure for me, this wouldn't be on the top of my list, right? Because it's 39% of teachers submitted their results of how they feel about the school, and it's 100% trust of the principal. That doesn't mean that, for me, that doesn't show that's everyone's voice. Um, and so that would raise red flags to me. It wouldn't be at the top of my list. So you want to make sure that the amount, you want to make sure that you're looking at the response rates. That's very important. You want to pay attention to the trends of prior years' report card and the leaders that are reflective of those years. Pay attention to those leaders because there may be schools that have turnover in leadership as well. You want to look for that school that has consistent leadership, that has a strong trust between teacher, principal, and that is obviously academically rigorous, and it's a home that you want to spend most of your career in. Good question. 23, 24 data is not out just yet. If you try to click on it, it would take you to a login page. It's just not available yet. It should be available by the start of the next academic school year.
Definitely great question. I think, but also, even if you don't have the last year, I think, like Nasim said, you could look at the trends, you could look at previous years, and all the while, it might not be the exact same results in 23, 24 data. You can still use the data that is available to make informed decisions. And honestly, I hope everyone has taken note. Like I said, take your notes. Make sure you take down this site because this is priceless information. I can't stress enough how important it is to not only research, but to also keep it as a two-way street. The same way that you're looking, you want to be hired, you should be also looking for a place that you want to be at. So I think it's so important to do your research, to take your time to do these things because it is time consuming. So take down that resource, make sure that you're doing the research. And before I ask my next question, I just want to give a chance to go back a little bit. So Ms. Therese asks, does the New York City Board of Education still allow persons to hold temporary licenses and teach at the same time?
What do you mean by temporary licenses?
Okay, I once went into the Board of Ed. I just saw some advertisements for a mathematics teacher, and then they allowed me to get I guess the initial temporary license. I hadn't had no communication courses. I just had the mathematics course, and then I had 3 years to finish master's to get my education courses like ed psychology under my belt, but it wasn't teacher fellows. I just went right down to 65 Court Street, fill out my application, did my fingerprint, but I've been out of the system. After 3 years, I had a young child, and I moved for family reasons, so I never did that. but I know at one point they had it, so I'm trying to figure out if they still have it.
If it's the same thing, but I do know now they do offer an internship certification, which might not be the same thing as a temporary license, but what it is it allows you to get a internship certification so that you could start teaching before you actually become certified. So that might be something that works for you in that case. For the next question we have.
One other thing to also answer your question. They may offer temporary I know temporary licenses is a thing that they used to do many years ago. It's not really something that they do now. But they may also offer it based on need. And so you should reach out to Helen Spencer. She saved my life when it came to certification. So I put her email hspencer@brooklyn.cuny.edu. She's definitely good people. Reach out to her because she's the go-to for certification. And she has all the connects in terms of like who to go to for the state and etc.
Where did you put it, or you'll send it to us in the future? I don't see it.
It should be in the chat.
Okay. Thank you.
And if you don't get it there, I'm happy to email it out. I could email the links to everyone who's here now. And then just one last question from the audience before I continue. For CTE, Melanie, you might want to clarify your question. For instance, CTE still count preschool with early childhood education degree? Do you mean like will CTE experience still count towards like your preschool or early childhood education?
Yeah, my question is like because I have experience in preschool and I have certificate, but even though I'm in my towards getting a certificate license in early childhood education, does it count as ECT? Because that was a career um in a way, teaching, correct? Or is something else like if you were working in the office or something, that's what it counts CT, if I'm correct.
So, are you applying to become a CTE teacher?
No.
Okay. Because what did I mean? So when I mean about CTE, it's like a separate, it's like a separate license. So it's like a license that allows a teacher to teach students in career and technical education. So it's more of like the vocational type of uh professions, as I said, carpentry, cosmetology, like doing automotive repair stuff. So if you're like into childhood education, from what I'm reading, and early childhood education, um, the two are very different. So CTE would not your child early childhood experience wouldn't count as CTE, if that answers your question, unless you have like experience within cosmetology and all that, like the actual vocational jobs.
Okay, you just answer my question and you made it more clear. Thank you.
Sir, can I add something to that question also? In terms of your comment, I remember I also came from the field of business and accounting. So when they count a career, like a trade, a career, profession, recognized profession, like a CPA, a CFA, and then you're able to enter the school that way. But I don't think the question that she asked, and I think she were able to get the answer. But no, if you are a daycare provider from birth to whatever, it doesn't count as a professional license. You basically have to have a professional license like CPA for accounting, a carpenter, a woodworker, you're state certified in that field. I hope that was helpful.
course. Thank you so much. Yeah, so great questions. Keep them coming. I think this is a great conversation. So let's get into our next question. So we talked a little about the application process. It is lengthy. You do want to apply early. Make sure that you have your resume updated. That is something that you can change once you submit it. Everything else has to be finalized once you're submitting it. So don't let that resume hold you back from submitting. Like I said, the earlier the better. But once you apply, right, we know you're gonna get called and you're gonna get an interview. So let's get into some interview questions. Nasim, can you tell the students here today what they can expect in the interview process and if they should or can apply to more than one role at once?
Yes, so you could definitely apply to as many schools as you want. Hit up those principals. You're gonna feel so anxious, right? You're gonna feel very anxious because this is like a high stressful moment. My recommendation is do not accept the first call you get. Make sure you look up the report card. I hate to say it, oftentimes, schools that have high turnover tend to be the ones that are making those calls. So you want to make sure that you are doing your research and you're looking and you're investigating for your future home. I, for me, it was the first call. So, and I did not look at the report card. If I had looked at it, it would have been a different story. So make sure you look at the report card. When in terms of the interview, it's much more of um, an interview between when the school's interviewing you, it's much more of an interview for you because you're looking into like you're paying attention to like how the type of questions that they're asking you. So I remember the questions that they used to ask me were like my teaching philosophy was a big one. They used to ask me how do I differentiate instruction? How does my instruction align to the New York State standards? Alignment is very huge. They often ask questions about vertical alignment. And so you want to make sure that, you know, you approach those type of questions with like leadership and collaboration, a collaborative approach. Um, they may ask you questions of like, think of a challenging moment that you had with maybe a colleague. Like, how did respond? Like, what was your interaction like? How did you respond? That's more of a question of like asking, looking into like what kind of person you are, in terms of if you have to work with somebody that you may not be close with or may not agree with all the time. So you want to make sure when they're asking you questions, it's not just a question answer dialogue type of thing. They're they're interviewing you with those questions, right? They're looking to hear if you're a committed pedagogue, if you have leadership, if you're authentic, if you're hungry. Um, they take the questions don't take them as face value. The questions that they ask you are more of trying to get to know you, and you want to make sure that you do your homework about the school, look up the school website so that you come in with your own questions. You want to make sure that you have done your research so that your questions are not generic, but that they're very specific and it kind of like gives you a clear image of what you're looking for in your future home.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I do have some more questions, but I want to give Melanie a chance. She has her hand raised and has been waiting patiently. So feel free to unmute yourself, Melanie, and ask your question.
Yes, I have a question. I have a couple of questions. It's like, do you need to bring your portfolio, like when you did your student teaching, and and when you do the interview, you already should have your certificate already, your license already when you get the interview. Like for
Yeah,
example,
Melanie.
like I'm still in current student, and I didn't even did no student teaching yet.
So that's a great question. So in terms of student teaching experience, that goes on your resume, right? So you want to make sure that all of that is on your resume. That's a great question that you asked. Whenever you go to an interview, I would highly recommend for you to bring um demo to prepare for it. Make believe you're preparing for a demo lesson. Bring some sort of lesson with you that is grade appropriate. Because oftentimes, if a principal really likes you, they're not gonna do this. They usually schedule the second level of an interview for the demo lesson separately, so you have time to prepare for it. But just in the event they ask you to like teach a lesson, you are prepared and you're not like looking for it. And when you do your demo lesson, they look for the things that they look for is engagement, right? Is it rigorous? Is it aligned to the state standard? Have you differentiated for the needs of all students? They want to see how you are engaging with the students at the school. They want to see what that engagement looks like, feels like, sounds like. They want to look at the quality of your instruction. Um, they want to make sure that it's pushing young people towards critical thinking, um, and getting them to write analytically, and they're looking for all of those things. They want to figure out if you're the good candidate. On the flip side, that gives you an opportunity to kind of see, you know, what type of students you're going to be teaching, right? What are you going to have a large special ed population, bilingual population? Are you teaching students from low income backgrounds? Are you teaching students from average to high income, right? So like it gives you a taste of what the community is like. It gives you a taste of what maybe the learning gaps that may exist. So it's much more of an experience for you than it is for them.
Excellent. Hopefully that answers your question. I know I see, but if you're looking to raise your hand, if you go to the more section, I think it's there where you can react. So great. So I see the questions coming in, so try to hold off. We're gonna open up in a few moments so that you guys can ask all your questions. So you talked a little bit about what admins look for in a demo lesson, like the engagement, alignment. So I'm not gonna ask you that. Let me just see. So because we have like about 20 minutes left. Do you want me to continue my questions, or do you want to go into the audience questions? Maybe we go into the audience so that
Yeah, we can go into the audience, yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing I just want to add, because the last question, I know Melanie asked about, like she mentioned that she didn't have her student teaching yet. I just want to make note that before you don't apply yet unless you're going to get your certification by the 2026 school year. So the way every year the application opens, but let's say, for example, Melanie, if you're still doing your student teaching and you're not going to be getting certified by this August, September 2025, then don't apply yet. That could mess up your application. You want to make sure that you're expected. You don't have to have it when you apply, but you want to be expecting to have it by the time you start. So just keep that in mind. I just wanted to make note of that. And then I'm going to get into the next question. So Rakshana would like to know, if there is a certain school, like the new pre-K district, 20 schools, if you want to work there specifically, how can you initiate or find out if they are hiring?
That is a great question. I would say my recommendation is reach out to the principals, right? So if you look up the website NYC DOE, finding schools. So if you click on this, if you go to search, school search um, schools.nyc, reach out to principals, because sometimes a job posting that you see is not really a job posting. Meaning, what do I mean by that? Meaning they already have somebody in mind for it. And sometimes a principal did not put up a job posting but is about to soon, but the fact that they got your resume, they're going to prioritize you, right? So you want to make sure that, and sometimes last second hiring takes place a couple of days before the school year starts, and they are scrambling and looking for teachers, and they will call you to ask for an interview or a demo lesson. My first job, my first school required me to do an interview and a demo lesson. My second school did not require me to do a demo lesson. It was just an interview. And so not every school will require a demo lesson, and that's something you want to pay attention to, and you just want to make sure that you have everything prepared, um, and that you're reaching out to principals directly, and that you're being proactive about it. And they get so many emails, so you want to make sure that you continuously are persistent.
Thank you for that. I think that's a great question and a great point. This goes to my point earlier about the application process, right? Like, so yes, you have to get on the online, fill out the online application, but reaching out to principals is part of the application process as well. You have your formal and your informal approach. The other thing to keep in mind is this is called a letter of interest, what you're sending out. It's very similar to the cover letter. So you don't have to submit a cover letter when you're applying, but when you reach out to principals, you do want to make a letter of interest. This is something the Career Center can also help you with, because this is your first impression that you're giving the principal. So make sure that you're taking your time, you're the same way you do the research with the school, so that you can incorporate those things into the reason why you're applying, so that you can make a well-rounded letter. So please keep that in mind. I encourage you all, if their jobs are not listed, reach out to the principals, as Nasim suggested, which is a great way to find out about opportunities, because as he noted, they're not always going to be listed. And also reaching out to faculty, staff, such as myself, your professors, because they're also going to be having opportunities. And if you're not telling them, hey, I'm looking, they're not going to know to send it to you. So just keep that in mind. Then I see a question from Chantal. She said, I've been told if I do my student teaching, I won't be able to apply for the internship certification afterwards. I would speak to Helen Spencer about that. I don't know if she told you that. If you want to verify that, Chantal. Hopefully, Therese, you figured out how to do the raise hand. We got to that question. We have another question. I recently completed my undergraduate degree in childhood education, grades 1 through 6, and currently volunteering at the same school and doing my certification exams. The VP registered me today as a substitute teacher. Do you think this means there's a good chance that I might be employed as a teacher if an opening comes up?
Congratulations on the nomination of becoming a substitute teacher. That is a big step and milestone. Um, so there's a reason why you're now a substitute teacher. They found that spark, that magic. They see something in you that you're connecting with the young people at the school, that, they want to keep you. And so my only recommendation would be to continue remaining committed, right? If this is a home that you're looking to becoming a full-time teacher, seek those extra opportunities, whether that's after school, unpaid, right? You want to show commit. I'm not saying, sell your time and do all this free work, but you want to do little things here and there that maybe that show a level of care and fidelity, um, of some sort of like interest of the school community. And so definitely maintain what you're doing. You can even ask the administrator, come in and observe me, give me your feedback. You can even have a honest conversation and express to them your joy and the level of um happiness that you have, and how committed you are to the young people, and inform them that you are pursuing a you are pursuing a career to enter in becoming a teacher, and that you want it to be in this home. So definitely, don't fear your school leader. They want to hear growth. Ask for different ways that you can help, and be committed and stay connected to the school. Those are the things, those are the buzzwords they want to hear, right? You want to make sure that you're kind of buzzing into them, commitment. How can I help? What can I do for you after school? Do things, help out even when you're not asked to. So be that team player, and continue doing what you're doing, and have that at some point have an honest conversation about becoming a teacher at the school, and hear what they have to say. If they're not staffed, that principal can recommend you to a friend, or that assistant principal could recommend you to a friend within the district, because they all talk to each other, within different schools, within the same district, different districts. So definitely those, that's your networking right there. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Miss Lewis, I'm sorry, I couldn't find the raise my hand button, but I had a question on the same line about a substitute teacher. Because while I'm completing my master's full time, I just want some substitution work. Is it possible after, I don't want to take up a lot of time. Is it possible after I could get some information that you have or that the guest speaker have, please? About how to become a substitute teacher. I don't want to be in a school every single day.
Yes, just to quickly answer that, I think for the most part, you do have to get nominated from a principal. So you can either write a letter of interest, like expressing to a teacher, excuse me, a principal that you're interested in becoming a substitute. Or usually when students do their student teaching, that is the that is the other opportunity. But Nasim, if you wanna lend to that.
Yeah, so I sent you the New York City Public Schools substitute teacher interest survey. So when you click on the website, it gives you the interest survey. Basically it's saying that they're going to keep your information on file and share it with the schools in your geographical area. So going back to what Ms. Kendra Lewis was saying, I would recommend complete this form, but also do outreach to schools, because the principal does have to nominate you. So reach out to, like you said, you don't want to be going from school to school to school. You want to stay in one place. Definitely look into that, and reach out to principals for that nomination. Before I became a para, before I became a teacher, after being a para, I went from being a full-time from being a paraprofessional to a substitute teacher. And so I went from school to school to school because that was my opportunity to see what the school was like, because oftentimes you won't get that in an interview. They will show you one side of the building, or they will try to limit you from revealing everything about the place. And so when you're a substitute teacher, right, and you're working within schools that you want to kind of know if you want to be there, it kind of gives you an inside view, a different type of inside view that an interview and a demo lesson won't really give you, because now you're not just seeing the school leaders and the students, but you're seeing what the day-to-day school function is like. Oftentimes in an interview or at a demo lesson depending on the time of day, it may be an empty building with selected few students, or with a few adults at the interview. So you don't really get the entire taste. You don't get the real taste of the school. And so to see the day-to-day functions, sometimes being a sub first will kind of give you that inside view of what it's really like.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, so if you have, please make sure you take down that the form, and like I said, I'll also try to send these links to everyone that's here today. I want to get to Jarlene's question. I see her hand raised. I also just wanted to make a note that someone had asked about the contact information for the Career Center, so I did put that into the chat. I put in the location, the phone number, as well as our general email, as well as my email. So please feel free to reach out. Any questions, anything career related, I'm happy to help. So let's continue with the question. So Jarlene, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm not sure if you guys answered that question before, but I have been working with DOE as a substitute paraprofessional. I have been working as a paraprofessional, sub teacher, with agencies through DOE, and also I have been a full-time teacher through working with charter school. However, I currently right now I am not working because I was on maternity leave, but I moved to Long Island. So now my thing is, I know what the school system, school system in Long Island is totally different from Brooklyn or any other boroughs like Bronx and anything like that. So for example, right now I am currently enrolled for early childhood and the master program at Brooklyn College. And I would like to work, or like, even if it's like a substitute position. I know in Brooklyn, some schools allow you to be working even when you don't have your certification. But in Long Island, they do not accept, you need to have your certification in order to work. So as of right now, if I would like to work, can I go apply to get the certification even though if I'm not done with the courses yet?
Yes. So to become a substitute teacher, you just need a bachelor's degree, which you have.
Mhm.
On that website, it tells you what the eligibility requirements are. So you need a nomination from a principal, a bachelor's degree. You need to have some sort of proficiency in reading, writing, and speaking in the English language. So when you're doing the onboarding process to becoming a substitute teacher, that's like a component that you have to do in 65 Court Street, and then authorization to work in the United States, which is your documentation. So to answer your question, yes, you don't need to be certified. Um, you just need to have a bachelor's degree and you're working towards certification.
So even if I did all those the onboarding process, I still have to go through it again. Because I did it
Um,
when I was like a paraprofessional with DOE.
it just means because you're in the system, that just means the processing would be much quicker.
Okay.
Yes, the onboarding, yes, you do the onboarding, but the processing would just be much quicker for you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
It will.
Thank you for your patience and for asking the question. I'm super excited that you guys are here and engaged, and I think this is a great opportunity. So I'm glad that you were able to take advantage of it. So let's dive into these questions while we have about another 10 minutes with Nasim, because we don't want to, overwork him and make him not want to come back. So let's respect his time. So but awesome, Chantel. I'm glad that you're gonna confirm with Miss Spencer. And don't forget, after today's call, like, you guys could always reach out to me. Nasim has been super generous in sharing his contact information, so you're always able to connect with him. So if you haven't already, make sure that you connect with him on LinkedIn, because we want to encourage networking, right? I'm sure you've heard it before, but I can't stress it enough, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to believe that as a student. I wanted to say, no, I'm going to get my grades and that's all I need. But I learned that is not the case. And it's not because you want to brown nose and you want to, kiss behind, excuse my French, but you want people to know how great you are. And that's why it's so important to connect, right? So I just really want to stress that it's all about making those connections. So please make that a huge takeaway for you this evening. So let's get into these questions. Armando, who's been patiently waiting, asked if you have a degree in one education subject area, but would like to earn a master's in a different education subject area and get certified in both. How do you ensure the school you apply to staffs and keeps you in one area so that you don't get forced to transition to the other?
That's a really good question. So my recommendation to that is so um so if, for example, uh let's say you're certified to becoming a social studies teacher. If for example, my situation, right? Let's say you have a social studies content license and then you have a special education license, right? And let's say you don't want you don't want to be hired under the special education license. You just want to be a content social studies teacher. My recommendation is that you better not apply for the license that you don't want to be uh that you don't want to that you don't want to teach under, because if you purchase the license, they can assign you you can be doing that type of work if they see that you have a license in that. But if they see that you just have educational background, they really can't um, they really can't uh, make you, I mean, they could give you up to one class out of your license area, so they may like throw that at you, but it's not like you're teaching an entire section of that of what a teacher of that license would be doing. So just like don't apply for that license if you don't want to fall higher under be hired under that license. And because you know that schools, there's if there's a need, there's a need. But my other thing here is the other thing is like the more licenses you have, you become much more marketable. So definitely when you are applying for schools, you want to inquire about that, right? If you, let's say if you're in a situation where you've already purchased and you have all those licenses and you just don't want the school to use this one license, and you have, you know, you just fear because you have it, they may assign you that, or they may throw it your way. Have a conversation with your principal, right? Ask, like, you're applying for a specific role and a specific job, so they have to respect that you're applying for that job, right? If I'm applying to become um, a math teacher, right? Though I have ELA background, let's say hypothetically, you can't give me an ELA caseload, right? Course load. You want to make sure that you are being hired under the license in which you've applied for, and just kind of note in the back of your mind that they could give you a class out of your license area, so that can come your way.
Great point. We did have another question, but it looks like that person had left out, so hopefully they'll join us back. Okay. This next question, do you know any cases when international students, after completing a teacher preparation program, got licensed and got a job in New York City public schools? What problems might they face?
That is a great question. So yes, I do know of instances where, yes, I do know of instances where international students, have completed a teacher preparation program and then they got licensed and got a job within the New York City public schools. In terms of the challenges that they may experience, you know, there may be like challenges in terms of like the type of like the way the education system that they're used to from back home. There may be like language challenges. There may be like challenges of like norms and you know things like of that sort. But in terms of like challenge in terms of like process and paperwork and in becoming a teacher, it wasn't really, there wasn't any difficulty. But I do know of someone who was an international student, um, and kind of rose up the ranks in education, and just don't really like, they just kind of are still like they haven't Americanized, right? So like that, I guess. And so it may kind of turn some people off. And so you may come in with different, like, you may come in with totally different, unique experiences, and your upbringings may be very different. And if that becomes your leadership style, it may turn people off. And so, like, you know, there are successes, because you do bring unique skills and talents and language and culture and all that stuff. But there may be also challenges where there's good things to it and there may be some bad things to it.
Great question. So we have another student here, Samir, who is asking, I'll just read it verbatim. I'm not an education major, but interested in teaching. Should I do graduate degree in teaching or apply for New York City teaching fellow? I could speak a little bit about that, but I'll let Nasim
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, of course. I am not an education major, but interested in teaching. Should I do a graduate degree in teaching or apply for New York City teaching fellow?
I think so that's a very good question. So if you want your education to be subsidized, basically meaning like you become a teacher in the DOE in the New York City Public Schools much faster, and while you're completing your education, I think that's really good. But there's also limitations to that, right? You will be assigned to very specific schools. So you will be assigned to Title One schools, very specific Title One schools now, not all Title One schools, whereby the retention tends to be low, right? So the reason why they kind of created teaching fellows, it's to help fill and hire employ staff at schools that have high turnover. So there is like if you want to kind of get into the teaching profession, yes, you can do that. And if you want to get your education subsidized, yes, you could do that. You're working and you're also getting paid to go to, like, that's great. But I didn't go that route because I didn't want to be limited. And what I mean limited, you're limited from like within the time that you're at the teaching fellows program. And then after completion, then you can go to any other school that's not Title One. I didn't do the teaching fellow program. I couldn't because I had my bachelor's degree in education. Teaching fellows are for students who are career changers and don't have any background in education. So I wasn't eligible for that. But that's the cons to teaching fellows. Like, you will be hired in schools that tend to have high turnover. I'm not saying it's not a good program. It's a really good program, especially like it gets you the foot into the door quicker. But those who tend to do the general teacher preparatory program, you do have to pay out of pocket. You may want to consider maybe holding, I don't know your current status in terms of employment status. You may want to think about being a substitute teacher while you're pursuing your master's in the traditional program, where you may have more freedom after your first year of completing that program, where you can apply for your internship certificate and work at a school while you're completing your certification.
Excellent, great advice. I will also just want to add, if you're depending on what your career goals are, there are also alternative networks to the New York City public schools, such as charter schools, which I think someone here has already expressed that they have some experience with that. And that's another alternative where sometimes they do subsidize your education and also obviously, like, pay you while you're a student. So those are options. If that's something that you want to explore and talk more about, feel free to email me and I'm happy to further discussing that. So we have a few more minutes. Nasim, are you okay to answer more questions, or do you want to?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much again for your generosity. So let me get through these questions quickly. We asked this one if you have a degree in one. Okay, so Genevieve asks, should I fill out the application now if I have a letter to verify the intention of CUNY Brooklyn College to recommend teacher certification, working under an internship certification?
If you are ready to begin teaching fall 2025, the answer to that question is yes.
Does that answer your question, Genevieve?
So what I mean is if you're going to get your license, if you're going to pass those exams by fall of 2025, yeah, you're good.
Perfect, great questions. We asked the question about international. Okay, this last question. Do you know, one, I just want to thank Melanie for chiming in and adding to this. Definitely reach out to Jonathan Rubin through LEAP. There's a lot of great opportunities and support services, so please take advantage of that. And just since Rakshana asked, I'll ask aloud, do you know any providers that have free teaching child abuse workshops, school violence workshops?
If you are a part of New York City Men Teach, I believe they offer that. I remember they offered that. But also the UFT offers that as well.
Excellent. So UFT, LEAP, which is on campus, as well as New York City Men Teach. So there are definitely resources. So please take advantage of them. And this is why it's so important to network, so that you get to hear information that you wouldn't have known, right? This is such an important segment for your next steps. And I can't thank Nasim enough. So that answered all of the questions. I do still have a few more questions, but I think that I don't think it's necessary, considering, you know, we've been able to finish everything within the time frame. Let me just see. Oh yes.
Feel free to ask, Kendra.
Okay, perfect. So is everyone okay with me asking a few more questions? Perfect. So so we talked about the interview process. We talked about maybe we could go again a little bit more about the interview process. What was one of the most challenging questions in the interview?
The most challenging questions for me in the interview were the ones that required me to be it required me, like, it was one of those questions that required me to uh think about my response. So for example, the question that they always ask in terms of like, think of a moment when you think you could have done something better, in terms, like, think of a moment when you worked as a team and like how did you overcome a challenge, or like, think of a moment when you made a mistake, or something around, like, kind of like something around the lines of like, what could have you done better? Those questions tend to be very difficult for me, because I'm trying to sell myself. You're trying to sell yourself, but at the same time, you don't want to give too much context of what happened. But you just want to kind of give enough and spend most of your time in how you overcame that challenge. And so those tend to be the the harder questions for me, because you kind of there tends to be emotion, you know, when those questions are asked and how you respond to them.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's important. Like I said, you don't think you're not going to get into that interview, right? So start thinking about, you know, how to prepare for that. So that's why we ask these questions. So I have two more questions for you. How do teachers get evaluated?
Yes, teachers get evaluated using the Danielson framework. So I believe you should have taken the 3402 class if you're an undergrad. Graduate, I cannot remember the course code because I sat on the undergrad committee. I remember 3402. So you get evaluated on the Danielson rubric, and I know in C3402 they kind of talk about it, and CBSC as well. 3402 they kind of talk about the Danielson report, Danielson rubric. So you get observed on 4 components of Danielson. The first component, you may want to take notes. The first component is 1A, which is demonstrating knowledge of content and pedagogy. So it's basically rating how 3204, yeah, class 3204, right. So demonstrating knowledge of content and pedagogy for 1A of Danielson is basically assessing whether you know the content to what you're teaching, right? Whether you know your subject area. The other component is 1E, designing coherent instruction. So that kind of is like taking into account, you know, the how you planned, right? Was it clear? Was it prepared? Did you have like a structure, an agenda? Was it timed well? The second component is 2A, and that is creating an environment of respect and rapport. What, is your classroom safe, right? Is it respectful? Are you respectful to your students? Are students respectful to each other? The next component is 2D, managing student behavior. So in the event, so they look at how you manage students' behavior, right? So if a student is misbehaving, your administrator that's evaluating you is looking at how you're de-escalating, and getting the student back to uh, learning. The next component is 3D, using questioning and discussion techniques. This is a huge component. Using questioning and discussion techniques. What type of questions are you asking your students? Are your questions DOK level 1 or 2 versus DOK level 3 and 4? And so it's like questioning and discussion is critical, because that leads to engagement, which is 3C of Danielson, engaging students in learning. How engaged are students in the classroom? Are they actively working, or do you have kids putting their head down and not talking? Are they actively having a conversation of the content that they're learning, or are they talking about what happened in the cafeteria the last period? The next component is 3D, using assessment and instruction. So they want to see how you're how you are you using your set, how are you using these, how are you assessing your students in instruction? So you've delivered the instruction. Now, how are you assessing whether they understood what they're learning? 4E is growing and developing professionally. So what are the PDs that you're doing after school? What are the things that you're doing around the school? Are you on the SLT? Are you running a club? Stuff like that. So that is a component for E. And then what they have is the assessment of preparation and professionalism section of Danielson, which is a combination of 1A, 1E, and 4E. That kind of just like gets averaged out. So that is what the Danielson rubric is. And you either have a formal observation or an informal observation. So formal observations are an entire period, and informal observations tend to be a minimum of 15 minutes. For example, today I had an informal observation, but my principal stayed the entire period. So it's a minimum of 15 minutes. They could stay for as long as they want. You always want to make sure that you have a lesson plan presented. And depending on your tenure status determines how many informal and formal observations that you get. If you are a probationary teacher, you get 3 informals and 1 formal. But there are instances, and depending on your end of year rating, also determines as well how many observations you get every year or for that next academic year.
Excellent, very involved, a lot of work. Sounds a little nerve-wracking, but it's definitely doable. So make sure that you guys keep that in mind. Make sure you're taking your notes so that you know what to expect. I'm gonna ask my last question and then get into the chat before we part. Can you just tell us, you have great experience. You're in one of the high needs areas of special education, and now you're pursuing leadership. I'm just curious, what inspired you to enter leadership?
I want to do more. I feel like as a classroom teacher, I get bored really quickly, and that's my problem. And so I want to do more. I want to serve much more constituencies. I want to make um, a much more larger impact. The best impact that you can make is in the minds of young people. But in terms of impact, I'm talking about from a policy standpoint. I'm talking about school building decision makings, right? The tone of your school, the leadership of your school. I want to make sure that I want to do more in that capacity. I've been in schools that have been very challenging to work in. And so that has kind of inspired me to create an environment that's home and family oriented, and making sure that I do the total opposite of what a horrible school environment is like. And so it has inspired me to want to serve more constituencies, and I want to uh, I want to make a different type of impact, not just supporting students, but also supporting teachers as they grow professionally and encouraging them to grow professionally. Oftentimes, as teachers, we don't have cheerleaders on our side. Your supervisor comes in, it's business, they observe you, and then you're out. I don't want to be that type of supervisor. I want to be that supervisor when I sense talent. I want to make sure that, we use that talent, right? I want to make sure that we're growing that talent. I want to make sure that it's taking you to where you want to be next. Whether that is as an aspiring administrator, whether that is a coach. So, growing my teachers is very important. And oftentimes we really don't see that type of support. And so all of my experiences of the worst school to the best schools that I've been to have inspired me to want to create a change, and to create a different type of impact, a much larger impact, impacting more people, aside from just only students, but I want to impact teachers. I want to ensure that I'm supporting, we're impacting the community. So that's what inspired me to enter leadership.
Amazing. I love it. And I just can't wait for what's next. I can't wait to see you in that leadership role and say, I remember when he was teaching. So I'm super excited and I can't wait. I know that, future educators as well as students are truly lucky to have you as a future advocate for them, because especially in public schools, we don't have enough people who are passionate, who care, who is not just looking at, getting paid. So I'm so enthralled and excited that you're taking on this leadership path, and I really can't wait to see what is in store. So I'm going to take the last question from the chat, and we'll conclude our segment this evening. But before I do that, I just want to remind everybody, next Tuesday, January 15th, from 5:30 to 7, we're going to have our education event, New Year, New Career. Then February 8th, we're going to have Uncommon Schools do and give you an opportunity to practice your demo lesson plan. So I know some people, the next question is going to be talking about how to prepare for the demo lesson and things like that. But if you're concerned about your demo lesson, come February 8th, practice that demo lesson, do it in front of some staff, some teachers, and get their feedback before you get in front of the class that you really want to be teaching. So that would just be my tips and advice. And, just make sure you guys mark your calendar. So let's get into this last question. How should we plan for a demo lesson? I'm worried I won't have a portfolio if I go for an internship cert instead of doing my student teaching.
So the best way to prepare for a demo lesson is when you're doing your student teaching, you want to make sure that you I used to, I don't know if I'm using the best word choice. I used to steal all of my mentor teachers' lessons, steal them all, right? You want to use them, right? You want to use the lessons that your mentor teacher helped support you create as your demo. You want to think about the best lessons that you taught at your student in your student teaching experience, because and it's the time when you shine the most, because and you want to bring that lesson to your demo lesson, because that is what will make you shine and distinguish yourself from the other candidates. Um, and so take that student teaching. Oftentimes, student teachers just sit in the back of the room and just kind of watch the teacher teach. Take helm and ownership of the classroom as early as you can. Take the risk, even if it feels uncomfortable. Take that risk. Be engaged. Ask for resources. Ask your mentor teacher for the curriculum and their lessons, right? It's okay to ask for their lessons. Ask for their lessons, ask for their units, right? Because when you become a teacher, you're going to be following those same units. So why are you reinventing the wheel if you have someone who's already done it and they got it from somebody else? So you want to work smart, not hard, and think about that strong lesson that you kind of knocked out off the ballpark, and you want to bring that lesson to the demo at your demo lesson of your school choice. But also one more thing, you want to make sure that that lesson aligns with the school's instructional focus. That is key. That's like the cherry on top. So make sure that you read the instructional focus on the school website.
Excellent advice. And if I could just add to that, I think you said it, but just to reiterate, don't let it be the first time you're teaching this lesson, right? The demo lesson should be something that you're comfortable with, that you're confident in, and that you get a chance to really shine so that they can see that you're the best fit for the role. So that concludes our questions. I'm so excited. Like, I really can't, thank you enough for joining us this evening. You could be anywhere in the world and you've decided to be here with us. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everyone who joined us on a Friday, right? In the freezing cold of January. I feel like you should also applaud yourselves for being here, because I think Nasim did a great job at pointing out that this is what commitment looks like, showing up, right? And that's just half the battle, just showing up. And you're here, you've walked away with valuable information, and now you have a connection, you have resources, information. So I'm super excited. I can't thank you enough. I hope that everyone has a great evening and enjoys the rest of their break. And I hope to see you during the semester.
Thank you all.